The real power of AI is it can do automate tasks for you. So it can do sort of low level SOC type transactions so that you can free up your smart folks to look at the more challenging problems. And the more you can offload into an automated fashion through AI or machine learning or whatever, the better off you are, so that you can take your limited resources and have them, do things that aren't so easy to do, at least at the moment, with an AI type algorithm.
Hi, everyone, and thanks to listening for another episode of the Future of Data Security. Today, I'm speaking with Robert Roser, CISO and Chief Data Officer at Idaho National Laboratory. Rob, thanks for chatting with me today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Rob, you have a very strong nuclear and particle physics background. I was quite impressed. How does one go from working with subatomic particles to cybersecurity and protecting national lab data and infrastructure?
Yeah, well, I can say it wasn't a planned transition, shall we say. I spent most of my career at a place called Fermi National Accelerator Laboratory as a practicing physicist, where we try to understand how the universe was created by looking at the subatomic world and understanding the rules that govern it. About, let's say, 6 years ago or so, I decided to make a change. The pace of the experiments were moving slowly, or more slowly than I wanted. I am sort of at a senior level in my career, and the things that were being built at that time would not take data before I would retire. And so I wanted to transition to something else. So I came to Idaho National Laboratory to basically help them monetize their data. Shortly after I got here, the CISO role opened up, and they asked me to fill it in an interim capacity, and that was 6 years ago. So I'm still in that. I'm still have both roles.
And how would you say your physics background prepared you for today's security challenges? Do you see any parallels or trends that made you ready for that role?
I mean, in many ways, operating a large detector or experiment is quite similar to securing the laboratory's infrastructure and data. In particle physics, the experiments are large. They're about the size of a 3-story home or 4-story home. They've got a million or nowadays, tens of millions of channels. They operate 24/7, and people are monitoring those detectors to make sure they're working properly, because you don't make a discovery with a single collision, if you will. It's a statistical process. And so if the more precision you want, the more data is required. And so the adrenaline rush that you get when you have a, uh, a detector go down is very similar to the adrenaline rush that you get when you're going through a cyber incident, if you will. So I'm used to sort of the it's cybersecurity, as you know, it's more than a career; it's a lifestyle. You have to be committed to it. You don't clock in at 9 and clock out at 5. You're sort of always on, and that's very similar to the world of particle physics, especially as a scientist.
That's very interesting because at the end of the day, we're talking about sensors. We're sensing the
Right,
physical
exactly.
world and something's happening. Can you paint a picture of how securing the scientific computing infrastructure, scientific data has evolved since your time at Fermi Lab? What are the biggest changes we've seen over the last 20, 10, 5 years?
Yeah, so Fermilab is an easier problem. Fermilab runs just a few experiments, and they're big, or big means thousands of people. And so everything is automated there. The data comes off of the detector right into a fiber optic pipe, which goes to a data center where data is stored, then processed automatically and reconstructed in terms of physics objects, and then placed someplace else and cataloged. It's open science. So at Fermilab, we had scientists from Russia and China and India and all the bad countries participating. And there was no real concern, because what we were after is just fundamental knowledge. Idaho National Lab is quite different. We're doing nuclear energy research, and that's not open science and open research at all. And so how you deal with that is quite different than how you deal with open science. Also, at Idaho National Laboratory, there's a lot of different instruments from electronic microscopes to nuclear reactors, not all of which are online, if you will. And so how you deal with the data is a different kind of challenge because it's not all automated and mainstreamed and fed into things. Sort of I would say the biggest change, right, in the last 5 or 10 years is nation states now getting into the act of cybersecurity, and they're in it for knowledge. They're not in it for the most part to make money. And if you have stuff that they're after, you're a target. And so at Idaho National Lab, where nuclear energy is sort of a hot topic, especially with the AI and the energy thirst that those algorithms have, we're certainly a hot topic and have to work hard to remain vigilant and keep the bad guys out.
Can you paint a picture for our audience of the infrastructure, the types of data that are found, let's say, at Fermilab and now at Idaho National Lab, just to give us a sense of the scope of this infrastructure and the types of data?
Yeah, so at Fermilab, the data basically each experiment has, and let's say there's 3 experiments going on at any given moment in time. So its data format is defined, if you will, by the experiment, and the software that reads it and reconstructs it is also built by the collaboration, and all the sort of things are automated. We use it in particle physics for the most part. We use sort of a farm of compute, if you will, where you have essentially commodity PCs and a broker, and you feed each collision event to a given CPU and have it go ahead and do its business, and then send the answer back to a main computer. And so that's how it works. In nuclear physics, well, particle physics too, as well. Here at Idaho National Lab, we have a supercomputer, and simulation is sort of, I would say, becoming more and more critical to the success of these experiments, being able to model things and and look to see how your data projects onto the model and see whether you understand things or not. The difference in Idaho is that, I don't know how many different kinds of experiments are going on, but hundreds, and the formats are different, and not all the data. I mean, we have international employees and we have international collaborators. Certain data can be viewed by certain internationals and not viewed by others, and so you have to sort of address that, if you will. So here we've moved to zero trust as a way to do that, as a security paradigm, which basically changes the uh, the traditional castle and moat, essentially a methodology where the firewall defines who has access and who doesn't, to where the identity does, in a zero trust environment. And so we start to leverage that to determine who can touch what. Also, back in the day when I was at Fermilab, we weren't using multi-factor authentication. Now it's commonplace.
You mentioned the difference between Fermilab, where the purpose is open research. The results of that research are available for the wider community.
Correct.
Now, with Idaho National Laboratory, things are a little bit more closed. Are there any unique data security challenges that are emerging from the sensitivity of that research at being nuclear? And also, is there anything specific around the high performance computing architecture in terms of data security challenges that you wouldn't find in another environment?
Let's do high performance computing first as a simple example. So we've come a long way in terms of high performance computing, in that it's now much easier to use than it has in the past. You don't need to be a real computer wonk to be able to leverage these huge machines. So that's a plus and also a minus. These machines can be targets for people that, let's say, want to do Bitcoin mining, if you will, right? Which is not something we want happening at our machines. In particle physics, it's relatively easy to identify whether something funny is going on, because your events have a sort of a similar structure, and your reconstruction is built a certain way, so you can look at how the CPU is being utilized to see whether it's running your algorithm or something else. In here at Idaho National Lab, it's different. It's not quite so simple, because we're not running a single or a couple different algorithms. We're running a lot of different ones, and so you have to be on the lookout for it. So we do have multi-factor authentication for any research that wants to get on. Depending on the type of data or the type of research they're doing, that data gets classified and stored in a specific location. and it may only be accessible by the person that's running the program, depending on what we've set up. It could be available to multiple people. It depends on the situation. Rarely is it accessible to everybody.
You mentioned nation state actors earlier and these types of threats. As CISO yourself, what are the biggest challenges that you see right now in securing scientific data, scientific infrastructure of that type?
So, although I'm not a government employee, I work for a company called Battelle Energy Alliance. Idaho National Lab is, for the most part, funded with federal dollars. And so we're required to basically go through all of the compliance requirements that are imposed by the federal government. And so you end up having, which is a lot, right? There's an awful lot of thou shalts coming down, especially in the last few years from the federal government to better secure things. And so you lose the balance between compliance and risk. And as a CISO, you want to spend your time taking a risk-based approach and securing the most critical stuff. But in this federal government kind of space, you still have to check all the boxes. And so balancing that is sort of the biggest challenge that I'm facing right now.
Are most of the experts and scientists that are accessing this infrastructure working remotely or are they on site?
Well, I would say, well, there's a significant number that are working remotely, either at universities or at labs around the world. And then our own scientific staff is mostly on site, if you will.
How do you maintain security standards while supporting these disparate groups? Do they all fall under one umbrella? How do you ensure that they access
Yeah, but the
these?
data is not under a single umbrella, right? And so by using zero trust and understanding the role of the person that's coming in and wanting to access stuff and putting in security controls on a given data set so that it limits access to X, Y, or Z, and standing up data loss prevention capabilities, you have a chance, if you will. It's not perfect by any means. We're still, I would say, I don't want to say at the beginning, but we're not as sophisticated as I would like, and we're working to get there.
Talking about emergent technologies, last year everyone was talking about generative AI. What are your thoughts on generative AI, its application to your field, its application to security?
So that's a great question. The applications that I worry about right now is that, now it used to be very easy to identify a spearfish or a fish that's coming in, right? Because the English wasn't quite right, or et cetera, et cetera. Now with these kinds of tools, the English is perfect. They can do very good background analysis. They can tailor these letters to an individual, and as you know, the human is the weakest link in any sort of cyber endeavor, and so that is a big challenge that we're facing now, is playing defense against these sorts of things. I mean, you look at what's been happening. Just pick up the New York Times or Wall Street Journal, and most of the big breaches are the result of some sort of phishing campaign or malicious link that was introduced in an email that somebody wasn't thoughtful about.
Do you have any other examples, maybe closer to the usage of?
Well, yeah, so we use AI in the sense that the tools that we deploy have AI built into it. I would like to start, I put in a request for funding to put together a small GPU farm and run our traffic through it, our network traffic, to try to identify malicious traffic from trusted sources. That's sort of the holy grail in cybersecurity, if you will. Right now, these AI algorithms, I think, are doing a pretty good job of repackaging sort of malware to make it sort of harder to identify. So security tools out there that are looking for specific ways of interacting with the computer, would be handicapped. And so you have to start to think about how you want to play defense. You can't just look for a particular piece of malware anymore. You've got to look at sort of what the malware is trying to do to identify whether it's good or bad, if you will. I think we're still in the early stages of learning what is both great and scary about it. I mean, we have security controls around our AI stuff because, as you know, and anything that you put in, let's say ChatGPT, is part of the training set going forward. And so there were a number of companies out here in Idaho. Micron was one of them, where intellectual property was inadvertently introduced into ChatGPT, is now part of their training data set. So I think initially lots of companies locked things down. I think we're starting to see now people opening them up again, but with some sort of measure, if you will. We're pretty conservative, so the generative AI that we run is in our own domain, if you will, so that if somebody does put something up they weren't supposed to, it doesn't go anywhere.
Are you concerned about shadow AI because a lot of organizations block specific tools and systems? But
That's that's a great question, and I'm very concerned, right? In the sense that so we do block any cloud AI service that we haven't approved for use, and so people could come in with a laptop or their phone, get on a public network, if you will, and then do some of their work through that personal device, if you will, and then yeah, that has me very scared, and I don't actually know what to do about it.
a lot of people are asking the same question. It's sort of an open, unresolved issue at the moment.
Yes.
You mentioned that in the world of Fermilab, as an example, it's very easy to understand the types of workloads that are running. The sensors are clear, the outputs are clear. Obviously, in the nuclear world at Idaho National Lab, there's a lot of different experiments running. You alluded to potentially the usefulness of GPUs and dynamic ways to assess the workloads. Based on that and based on your experience, what's your prediction on how we're going to evolve data protection and protecting sensitive infrastructure in the future with AI at its core?
I wish I had the answer. I could tell you definitively we could start a company and do and do quite well. I think a couple things. So first of all, the real power of AI, at least at the moment in my thinking, is it can do automate tasks for you. So it can do sort of low level SOC type transactions so that you can free up your smart folks to look at the more challenging problems. And the more you can offload into an automated fashion through AI or machine learning or whatever, the better off you are, so that you can take your limited resources and have them do things that aren't so easy to do, at least at the moment, with an AI type algorithm. I think we're starting, well, certainly at INL, all of our sort of infrastructure, critical, and industrial control system, all that stuff is on separate networks that aren't exposed to the internet per se, and so that's a start. But you still, I think, trying to basically solve the what I call the solar winds problem, where were breached and took a long time for somebody to realize that they were broadcasting bad stuff out. That's the holy grail that we have to start to use these algorithms to get to and secure the supply chain so these sorts of things don't. Well, if they happen, we identify them quickly.
I've been reading a lot about companies such as NVIDIA and others that are envisioning offering the market some AI bots like AI SOC analyst, AI risk analyst. Do you have a specific view on that development?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great idea. I mean, again, anytime you can automate some things and remove sort of the human element or potential human error, the better off you are. People worry. I thought there are some people that worry that that means that people are going to start losing jobs. I don't think it's a matter of people losing jobs per se, but I think it's that in fact, I think AI is going to create more jobs, not fewer. But the skill sets are quite different. And the question is, are we good enough to retrain the workforce to help with those sorts of things? I mean, you're not as old as I am, but if you remember in the 70s, all the futurists said with the advent of the computer that we were going to have all kinds of leisure time because the computer could do everything for us. Well, they really missed the mark on that one. Computer, you have to, all the output from a computer has to be analyzed by somebody.
The advent of calculators, people would go crazy and be unable to
Exactly.
do basic tasks. Rob, very interesting. If you were to give a piece of advice to a younger self or someone that is starting in the space, given your unique transition from scientific work to cybersecurity, what would be your top pieces of advice?
Uh, that's a good question. I mean, first of all, don't limit yourself. Be open. If an opportunity comes along, jump on it and learn something from it. I mean, I never turned down an opportunity to take on a different role or a project or whatnot, because there always comes. You start doing that a few times and you get the reputation for getting things done and making things happen, and you're going to get more and more responsibility. The hardest part of getting into cybersecurity is getting in there and getting into the field. And so there, I would say just, you can't run until you walk. And so find any kind of role within an IT organization or whatnot, and then you can build on that. Don't wait. Don't try to find the perfect cyber job right out of the box, because it's potentially not so easy. We're all looking for 10-year experienced people, and you know, and right now they don't exist. So we're having to hire young people and train them up.
Yeah, some people are looking for employees with 15 years of generative AI experience.
Yeah, right, exactly. Anybody that says they have it, you got to question.
All right, Rob, that's about all the time we have for today. So thank you again for joining.
Well,
If people
my
want to follow your work, where should they go?
The Idaho National Laboratory, Google that, and you can see we have a very nice public webpage. You can see all the different research that's going on, and follow us.
Okay, thank you very much, Rob.